teacups, what's brewing? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be reacting to the Get Ready With Me bees that Chantal put out actually this morning. I was surprised to see her up. It was about 10:30 her time. I was also up, so I watched it in real time, but then unfortunately I had to go to the grocery store, run some other errands. Oh, you guys, I spent 60 real in that grocery store today. That's £120, about 155-ish American dollars. Like, oh, just shoot me. About 10 of it was non-food, which means it comes from a different part of my budget, but my God, it was an expensive day. I had to go because I also had to go to the ATM because my cleaner's coming tomorrow, but I'm stocked up. I'm very well stocked up. My friend comes back, the friend I usually go grocery shopping with, comes back on, I believe, the 4th, so he'll probably need a grocery shop, I should say, maybe the 5th or the 6th, give him a chance to rest up. So this food should last until at least then. Luckily, most of it does get to be frozen because it's proteins and stuff, so it's unlikely to go off or be wasted, but it was a painful financial day. Probably not what you're here for, but let me update you anyway. But let's get back to this. So Foodie disappeared for a few days, and there was a lot of speculation as to where she was. Did she just pass out after she came off the beach because she was struggling in her beach video, which I have now watched at the very least. But she was alright for a few days, and then we had a community post basically raging about how she has a life, which is why she's been away, unlike the reactors, and that she'll be back soon, which means she's been watching, is it Monty? Is that who she watches? I can't, no, your mama. She watches them, and that's how she gets all her news, apparently. Definitely not her looking for her own name online. Definitely not, even though she admits to doing that. We tuned in and we're in the spare room, which was a little bit confusing because I thought Salah had set that up as his gaming room. But there's like a couch in there, so it just seems like extra furniture and stuff. She has a vanity that apparently Salah bought her, I guess, to just so she'd have an area, but she doesn't want to use the seat that comes with it because she's afraid that it's holding her now, but she's afraid it won't. So she's using his gaming chair. She's getting ready and singing. She has cameos to do. She's really excited about it. She's done about 20 and only 2 were trolls, or at least out of the ones she could tell, only 2 were trolls. Which doesn't really seem to match her viewer mix, but what do I know? Maybe there are, I was about to say, who am I? Who am I? What do I know? Maybe there are 20 people who are willing to pay that money to her, but I wouldn't. Salah is working right now. They're working on a store, which I assume she means like a storefront for the business, which is interesting because they usually sell their stuff in different places. We saw the discount store and what have you, so the idea of them having a storefront seems like quite a big change, but maybe I'm misunderstanding that. But she says you'll be able to buy the spray soon, and she's going to tell us later tonight. I don't know if she's going to announce it officially later tonight or if it's going to go live tonight, but it sounds like it. She then says, oh, you guys thought I was traveling, and she says if and when she does, she'll do vlogs, and she'd love to go live in the airport, but you know, people get overly invested in cool places and she doesn't want to cause trouble, and she's not wrong. People would, but that means we don't get the lives in the airport, which would probably be a lot more honest than the pre-recorded videos we would get, but this is why we can't have nice things. I realise that the word nice might be an overstatement there. She said that you'll be able to buy bee spray and oud and cleaning products. Oh, I tell you now, if any of you are thinking, oh, I might order because I'm interested, oud is incredibly strong. It's one of the strongest things I've ever smelled in terms of deliberate scents. So if you do order it, be aware that it does the most. So the big news she has here is she joined Weight Watchers. She does at least acknowledge that ALR did too, and that people are going to compare them. ALR has already given up. She lasted longer than I think Foodie will, and she only lasted a few days. So she claims she's been doing it for a few days, which might be true. It might also be why she hasn't been online. Maybe she was just too irritated when she was trying to do it. And, you know, you would think she'd learn from the fact that ALR has done it literally, 8 or 9 times at this point. And her having very similar issues with foods in some ways, you would think she'd realize that it's just going to give her the ability to justify food and so it's unlikely she's going to stick to her points. I'm not disparaging her, I'm just saying I know how my mind works, and I know that in some ways how we think about food is very similar. Someone asked, how was the border hot? And she said she didn't, not yet. I'm usually the first to accuse her of going over a border, but actually I believe it because I don't think it fits the timeline. She could be playing some double bluffing and she goes over at a random time so that the timeline doesn't match our expectations anymore, if she really did want to F with us, but she did, well, I suspect, speculation and shade. I think at the end of May, when she disappeared for a few days, that was what she was doing. So she's not due until the end of August or beginning of September, whatever her re-entry date was. So probably not what she was doing this time around. And as people have pointed out, traveling would be very difficult for her right now. So she's focusing on like all the health stuff because she wants to lose weight before she travels, because she would not be comfortable doing so. That being said though, there was some talk on Twitter, somebody, I can't remember who, but a few people that were saying, well, she can't fly now, flying would kill her now. And yet she seems to have gotten less healthy while in Kuwait because she's moving significantly less than she used to. And she didn't used to move a lot, but Kuwait doesn't lend itself to increasing her activity. But she was not in a good position to travel before she got to Kuwait. She wasn't in a good position to travel 3, 4, 5 months ago. When she did, like, she will do it again. She doesn't care what state her health is in, she will do it again. Whether she backs out of this particular trip or not, we will find out. But she knows her health is trash, and beyond these minor points of revelation, I don't think she gives a shit. She does say that the beach walk was eye-opening for her though, because she realized just how limited she was in her movement, and that she had seen a smaller lady there that wasn't struggling as much while wearing the same type of clothes, because she mentioned that the undercap and stuff she wears, like she was feeling dizzy and stuff because she was so overheated in it. Now, the thing is, she doesn't need to wear all those underlayers. Some women do, but you can do this with less layers. Like, I have seen it, and Saudi Arabia was stricter than Oman is, and there were women who did not wear all of these undercaps and things. So if she wanted to not layer up clothes, she could. I think her two issues right now is that her hair is probably patchy and still very short, so she might have trouble controlling it enough to slick it back, and I think she's worried that if she has a looser hijab, that when it comes undone, people will see her hair as it is. And I know she made a really big deal about not being embarrassed by her hair on the live today, but there's a bit of a difference between having a camera in between you and the person and saying, hey, look, I have no hair, it's a thing, versus accidentally your hijab slipping while you're out among strangers. It's a different scenario, I feel. And I think one would be a lot more embarrassing than the other. But I think the reason she doesn't get thinner abayas is that she still hasn't gone to go and get some made. And that would be the best thing for her. I know it's a little bit expensive, but really, she just needs to go and get measured, go and get them made, because then she can wear a loose one or wear something easier underneath. Because these fabrics that go up to her wrist, which, yes, she's meant to be covered, but because she could do it loosely past there and not be as hot as she is. But the abaya she was buying, she admitted that she was outgrowing. So go and get 2 or 3 made and just be able to wash them, wear them, and have a spare. I think that's really the best. That way you don't have to buy too many at once, but you don't have to be so bound up all summer. I started talking about Weight Watchers. She has 50 points and 28 weekly points. So if you go over, and she said, yes, she's gone over already. Turns out she had Pizza Hut, so she's used some of them. She's been doing this for, I think, 3 days max at this point. So the fact that she's already in her weeklies is a bit concerning, but I suppose ALR went over hers the very first day, so what do I know? She says the first 1-2 days were pretty rough, but it's okay so far today. The diet meals are done and they didn't waste any of them. I'm glad they didn't end up throwing out any of the food, but I would say having them at all was a waste of time, money, and resources if she was just going to end up ordering out around them anyway. She likes that they're a free food, and I'm guessing psychologically, knowing that you can eat these things, even if she's not particularly drawn to them, would make her feel less panicked, because I think that's what happens whenever she confronts the idea of being restricted. I think it immediately makes her panic. So maybe this is a good idea for her, but free foods are not calorie free, so I could see her really eating way too much food because she's like, oh, I can eat as much as this as I want. And the idea is, well, you get full, but she doesn't really have that trigger in her brain. And it is her brain rather than her body. I'm sure her body screams at her at times, but her brain is saying, eat, eat, eat. Is it the type of food she usually binges on? No. But I could see her doing some damage with them nonetheless. She said she doesn't find it as overwhelming as counting calories. It took me a while to get into the habit of like tracking food. I recently got back into it, but I think she's going to struggle with the consistency she needs for it, because consistency has always been her Achilles heel. Always. But in her case, it might actually be a good idea, in the sense that it seems like, based on what Amber said, that Weight Watchers seems to overly penalize you, like more so than the value of the food separately. But it's a lot of points to eat out. And one of the habits she really needs to get out of is constantly eating out for every meal. So if she did stick to this, and I know it's a massive if, that would at least be one thing it was encouraging her to do. She'd realize that she could get more food if she cooked at home, but I think the need for takeout is going to overwhelm her. Now, obviously, we have done this before, so I'm not hopeful of a big change here, but I think her upcoming trip that she's planning right now is probably concerning her, because I think somewhere inside her head, she does recognize how quickly she's lost mobility and how quickly she's lost the ability to do even the limited things she could do while still in Canada. And she's been researching all the Disney parks, if that's what she ends up doing, and she knows how big those parks are, and she knows some of the concerns she's going to have. And while it was exciting and she was all like, oh, girl power, fat power, I'm going to use a scooter and I'm not going to care, I think the reality of that, now it's coming, is actually quite daunting. So the best case scenario here would be that she used those few days she was away as a way to start it without immediately presenting it online, because this is her trying to be serious about it, and she thought, oh, maybe I can do this better if I'm not under scrutiny with it the first few days. But I do realize as I say this, that that would mean she had learned from past mistakes and was able to put aside her need for attention for a few days, which I realize is unlikely. Tells us a bit more about Weight Watchers. She says, okay, this was a concerning thing. This is one of the reasons I'm not hopeful. She talks about Weight Watchers increasing points with exercise. And I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. You can exercise and get some extra points. But that they even count housework. I would be very, very careful counting whatever shuffling she's doing in the kitchen as housework. Yeah, because they're meaning like you're on your knees scrubbing the floor, you're putting some physical effort into it. And I know that every movement is effort to her. Does she have to do less to achieve exercise? Yes, I suppose, but it seems like a really easy way for her to start increasing her point allocation when actually maybe the amount of effort she thinks she's doing doesn't quite match up with what they would count. Starts talking about her skin. She says her face looks purple and maybe the redness is her new skincare, and her face does look quite irritated. She has quite a serious breakout on her chin as well. Now, I might be noticing this more because she doesn't seem to have as many filters on today, but if this is somewhat close to her skin without filters, then she needs to go to a dermatologist and figure out what's setting it off right now, because it does look irritated. She says it's the cream, and it could be, one of the ingredients could be irritating her, in which case stop using it. Stop using it. Some creams do. Stop using them, or introduce them slowly and slightly less so that you can build up to using them full time. But sometimes products just aren't for you, so why suffer with them? I suppose because they were kind of expensive, and it's not like in America, a really shocking thing to me has always been that you can return makeup, because anything that gets kind of hygiene sealed, unless it's faulty, is incredibly difficult to return in the UK. So the idea that you can use half a thing of makeup and be like, yeah, I've tried it for a while and I don't like it, give me my money back, is shocking. And you definitely cannot do that here. So I'm guessing she doesn't want to waste the money because it was quite expensive, even if she only got small amounts. She mentions her mascara is great, and again, it's the Lash Princess. It's good mascara. I use it myself. I'm wearing it right now. And talks briefly about money. We are trying to be frugal. Because we have travel to do. Once you start paying attention to what you're spending, frugality becomes a habit, says the woman with 2 bankruptcies. 2, not 1, so clearly did not learn from that. I will say though, I do like her lip product here. I think she said it's MAC. I do like some of the MAC lip products, but it's a nice red, and it's a nice red on her. She does then move on to acknowledge her financial history and says that having someone who is normal with money helps. So at least that's one use for Silla. He looks things like, what? Sorry, you want to spend how much on what? So I can actually see that being helpful. I know the idea of him looking through her stuff creeped me out a little bit before, and it still kind of does because I would be really resistant to that, but I can also manage my money, so there we go. She mentions maybe buying a cheaper foundation. I think she's got a more expensive one at the moment, and that the Fit Me by Maybelline is good. I find the lightest shade they have to be a little bit too yellow on my skin. I really do need a pink base with my foundations, but I have heard good things about the Fit Me. I use the L'Oreal True Match in R1C1, which is like rose, what's the C? Rose Cool. Or if I want a bit more coverage, I use the e.l.f. Flawless Finish. It's like a satin finish, because if I do matte, it's just too drying on my face. Like, I'm getting older, matte is not flattering to me. I've already got dry skin, you know? But I use the Flawless Finish because it has a satin finish in the shade Snow. Both of them are affordable and are very good. So if you're looking for a new foundation you want to try and you don't want to spend the earth, recommend. I've been using them for years, actually. There was a brief conversation about that woman who got arrested. Was it in Dubai or was it in Abu Dhabi? But anyway, she got arrested because she was being, from what I can tell, either she screamed at the guy or she was being foul-mouthed. I'm not sure which. I feel like if she was talking up volume, if she was really screaming at the dude, if she swore, that would be a lot more serious. I don't actually know much about the situation of this, but she talks about Dubai still being an Islamic country. It definitely is in some ways, but the dress code and things like that is almost fully westernized. I went and I saw people in short shorts, in mini skirts. They don't seem to have any problems with that. But some rules are still in place, and like I say, I don't know exactly what this woman did, so I can't really speak on whether she should have been taken in or not. But someone in the chat said, oh, Dubai's too expensive for you, and I would absolutely disagree with that. I don't know who it was, but Dubai can definitely be affordable, especially for like foodie, because the major cost that you would have to take on to go to Dubai is the plane trip. But from the other Middle Eastern countries, it's a really easy trip. Like, I didn't pay the cheapest I could have, and I think I spent about 200-ish on the flight. So she wouldn't have to spend more than that, really. And you can get very affordable accommodation in Dubai. Like, I've got videos actually on my channel if you're interested. But the first time I went to Dubai, I got like one of those serviced apartments in a hotel. So it was very nice, very clean, but it had like a kitchen and everything so that I could buy my own food if I wanted. And that was £50 a night, $50 a night, around 50 of some currency a night. And it was a literal 2-minute walk from the metro stop. Everything is really well connected to the metro. Most things are, I should say. And the metro is quite cheap. And then this time I went, I got a really good deal on, it was a hotel at, was it the Marriott? I think it was the Marriott. And the Four Corners, 4 Points by Marriott, something like that. And it was £43 a night. So can you go and stay in incredibly expensive hotel suites and buy like luxury brands? Yes, Dubai is definitely a city you can be rich in because there is a ton of money in that region, from like a mind-boggling amount of money in oil money in that region. But it's also entirely possible to go quite frugally and enjoy it. She mentions Barbie. She said it wasn't going to be, or she'd heard it wasn't going to get released in the Middle East. That is not true because I looked it up because I wanted to go see it. I might end up downloading it because Oppenheimer is here. It's not coming out until I believe the date was August 31st. So there's a delay on it. I don't know if maybe that's because it has to go through the, I've forgotten the word for it. Is it the censors? Yeah, I feel like the censorship maybe. I'd imagine they have to look through it and decide if there's anything they want to cut. It'll be interesting. If I do end up seeing it in the cinema, I'll still try and get a copy of like a Western version of the movie and see if there's any big changes that I notice. But I am a little bit sad it's going to take so long. She has a small rant about people being hateful about her body and how she wouldn't have shown her body if she was ashamed. But how are these comments helpful? Well, they're not, but newsflash. Most of your community isn't here to help you. That's not what the internet's for. It's not a safe space where you come for support. For some people it can be, but everything you do is public and you soured your audience a long time ago. Are you shocked? Why are you still ranting? But speaking of ranting, she says she does it in the community tab and then she realizes that she's not supposed to and she deletes it because she's gonna be the better person. But of course she can only rise above it after she's dragged herself through the mud. She then also had a brief talk about how she doesn't want friends right now. She has a few that she talks to. I'm sorry, X'd out. But also she's the worst friend and she doesn't think she can be a good friend, and I would actually agree with that. Not necessarily for the reasons that she's saying, which is that she's quite flaky. She doesn't she's got a lot of social anxiety when it comes to people, and so frequently she'll make plans and then she'll back out of them. But I don't think it's that she doesn't want friends, not for a second. But I think this idea of, well, I don't want friends, I have you beezers, is kind of bullshit and is something, as we always say, that could probably do with a conversation with a therapist, because nobody wants to be lonely. And if you don't have anybody you can talk to, you will get lonely. And I say that as I am more independent than most when it comes to the amount of time I need with people. But I still have a couple of really good friends that I talk to almost daily. And especially when I'm in these kinds of situations where I'm not with family and I'm not with a lot of people that I can speak to, it's not easy to go and meet people, then I need that. You need to foster those relationships. And if she's recognizing that she's incapable of doing that because of her behaviors, then that's something she could probably do some work with and actually have a chance of changing. But as ever, we can't help her unless she's willing to help herself, so nothing will change. There's a few other little bits and pieces here and there, but I swear to God, trying to maintain focus on her when she does lives is quite hard, because you're like, come on, don't get distracted. What were you gonna say? And it's a little bit hard, but that's where we are. And I guess we'll see. I thought I'd get this out now because I guess we'll see some kind of announcement, if she follows through, some kind of announcement on the visa sprays and things tonight. And I just wanted to get this done first. So thank you very much for listening, and I will see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.